Ahoy, friends. It's me, Dave Landau. After a long night on stage, I like to kick back with a captain's hat and a fine cigar and watch the Dennis and Andy show. These guys are huge nerds, but they're the kind that you actually want to hang out with. Enjoy them. I do.
Awesome content. Like and subscribe now for Lock and Load.
Heck yeah, Lock and Load with the Dennis and Andy show. We are here. We're a little bit early today, but you know what? Whenever you get us, it's a great day. We just had things going on, had to make some shuffling and stuff. So that's why we're here a little bit early. But that's just the way it goes, right, buddy?
It is. It is.
God, my video is, what the heck is going on with my wife? Look at that crap video. Let's get our guest in here so it's not so damn blurry.
Yeah, internet took a crap. Look at that.
The internet took a dump as soon as we started. So once I minimize our screen a little more, it'll be better.
Thank you, charter/cox/internet
Spectrum
service.
Spectrum. Not even on Wi-Fi, and it's telling me my Wi-Fi signal's low. That's just ridiculous. But that's okay.
Because we got a topic today, and guess who's here?
We got a guest, and when he comes along, he brings this.
Now it sounds like the thunder rolls.
I'm bringing the thunder.
Great.
You guys look a little misty there.
Oh my God! It's the stupid internet.
Are you frozen?
Now
Am I frozen?
A little bit smaller. It doesn't look as bad because he's got his laptop open so we can see what it looks like on YouTube.
We've got the little signal up above, and it shows it went from full bars to whoop, literally down to one. And it's not even Wi-Fi. He's got direct access into the cable modem.
Yeah, well, do I look clean and sharp to you guys?
You do.
No, you look fine.
All right.
So,
okay.
You know.
That's all that matters.
You look like I'm looking through a windshield, on a rainy night, and you guys are standing out in front of the car.
It's that nice Vaseline they put over it to soften you to make you look better.
It'll make you look younger. Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's like the old Star Trek episodes where they get the soft light.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna have to bounce you. Are you gonna start talking?
Yeah, go ahead, bounce me.
If you dorks start talking about Star Trek, I'm out.
And we would never do that.
I'm always ready to talk about Star Trek.
That's right. And we will do. I have not forgot. I sent a message to Aaron, Dennis, and Graham about doing a show of Star Trek trivia that I have where I would be the host and Dennis, Graham, and Aaron would be the contestants. And that is still going to happen. Just
Okay.
gotta get the time.
All right. Okay. I'm marking it on my calendar as soon.
There will be no prizes given.
My calendar just says TBD.
Exactly. Touch big. Why does your calendar say that?
You just
Disgusting.
can't help it, can you?
God, you're so disgusting. Anyhow, Leg Kick is here. He says your stream is fine, Aaron.
Well, thank you,
Hopefully
Leg Kick.
ours will get there. I mean, it's just stupid. Okay, who cares? I'm not going to.
As long as they can hear us, that is more important.
That's right.
Especially when we start sharing some screens and, as we talk about comic books, because this show, we are going to talk about comic books for investments. And, Andy came up with some ideas for, some different categories. And, what about the newer investor versus the person who wants to drop a lot of money? So those are all good things. And as we come up with different lists, Andy's got his keyboard there. He'll be able to pop up pictures, and we should be able to see it, unless Aaron has them all handy right there.
I have a few handy for sure.
Yeah, I've got some. So that's the basic gist. I was thinking, I've when I go to conventions, when we all go to conventions, we see the back walls behind dealers and they have the nice CG seed stuff. And it was, I don't know if I told you this story, Aaron. I know I told Dennis. It was earlier in the year. I was at a con and there's a giant size X-Men. It was about $5,000. You know,
Okay.
it was probably a 455, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I did take a picture of it and I sent it to Helen. And all she texted back was ha ha ha. And I actually did text her back. I said, you can laugh, but on a serious note, $5,000 now for this book, 10 years from now will probably be doubled, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'd rather have a new kitchen.
Well, I can see that.
But
Because your investment in your home is probably a safer bet than investment in a comic book. But
true, but we're not going anywhere anytime soon. Our kitchen is already upgraded nicely. So
well, there you go.
I was just trying to tell her, like, you're just not catching my point. And I did. I told Dennis, I said, I'm like an elephant. I won't forget. 10 years from now, I will look at that same graded comic and whatever the price is, I'll take a picture, send it to her, and she'll go, what's this for? And I'll go, oh, that's just to show you the amount of money we could have made if I bought it 10 years ago.
Well, see, my problem is when I try to use that logic on Shelley, it's like, I never sell the books. So it's like, yeah, now it's worth $20,000, but I'm still not going to sell it. So
I don't either.
Yeah,
and my wife argues with me. That's why it was so hard for me to complete my X-Men run, particularly when I was getting down to the low numbers. And I finally said, look, if I buy this X-Men #1, this is what it's worth now. It'll be worth way, way more, but you're never going to sell it. But it'll be worth it. But you're never going to sell it.
But that's what she's not getting is, the point is, now with your X-Men #1, I know you won't sell it. It doesn't matter how old you get. I know you won't. You'll kick the bucket, whatever.
It's going to the grave with me.
But some people, like myself, can say, for instance, some of the CG seed stuff I have that is worth money that'll just keep going up in value. I can easily say that if I make it to like the 80s, you know, my 80s and stuff, yeah, I very well might be like, time to sell them.
yeah.
You know?
Well, I sold my entire Spider-Man collection, so I am capable of doing it. But I finished the complete run, and all I needed was Spider-Man #1 and Amazing 15, and I knew I'd never get either one of them. So I figured, well, okay, what's the point? I'm done. I've achieved the goal. I've got all this stuff in reprint. I can read it, you know, because I don't pull the books out and read them anyway, right? Especially the high grade ones. And so I sold it and paid off my truck and put some money in the kitchen remodel. And so I proved to myself that I actually could do it if the situation arose where I needed to do it. It was painful, but now I move on to other things. And, you know, it's like once you complete a collection of something, you know, it's like it sits in a box, right? And you can't, I mean, you can go revisit it and look through it every once in a while, but it is hard to sell that stuff, but I did do it. So,
but like you said, you did it for a specific reason. You weren't going to get Amazing Fantasy 15 or Spider-Man #1, at least not with that defeatist attitude you have. You weren't.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I could have, I was at WonderCon, like Shelley and I were, this had to have been 93 or 94. And they had a fine copy of Spider-Man, Motor City Comics had a fine copy of Spider-Man #1. And they wanted $2,500 for it. That's probably, I'd have to look it up, but that's got to be 20, 30 grand right now. And I could have, you know, but I couldn't bring myself to do it because I didn't have the cash. I would have had to charge it. And I was like, I just felt so irresponsible at the time, but kind of wish I'd done it now.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I was just reading in this book about John Romita Sr. that when he was a kid, he bought 2 copies of Action Comics #1, one to read, and he actually did, this is what's said in the book, put one away, bag and board. But the question is, does he still have it? or when did he get rid of it? Because as a kid, when Action Comics #1 came out, to go, I'm going to buy 2, one to read. Well, he got the one to trace over because he was an artist and read, because he was born in 1930, so he was 8 years old. And then he put one away. Could you imagine if he stole? I just read that this week, and my thought was, holy shit, he's 92 now. Does he still have that?
Oh, and being regardless of the condition, the fact that it's John Romita's copy would make it worth way more than normal for whatever condition it's in.
Yeah.
And for an 8-year-old to have that much hindsight is pretty amazing, especially back then.
And there's a lot of investors out there when we meet. So there's your investor who just wants to go out and buy copies, good quality. Then we've got a whole slew of what we call the 9/8 now. They only want 9/8 copies, or they want 9/8 raws, and they submit them. And if they don't come back 9/8, they immediately sell them and go back on the hunt for 9/8. So that's become an entire category of a type of investor right now.
That's what's happened with new books, because you can't, a 9.2 is not good enough for a new book, because all of them are, since post 1980, but especially post 1990, every book since the advent of the comic shop are in near mint condition, and almost everybody takes really good care of their books. So any of those books are not scarce. They're not hard to find. So you have to, then the grade has to become the most important thing, right? Because now I have to get a 9.8 because there's only X number of 9.8s, when there's thousands of copies of, the black costume Spider-Man, for example, right? There are literally thousands of graded copies of that book. Everybody who's got one's got a near mint copy. So how do you make it collectible? Well, then you have to get the highest grade possible.
I have an 8.5.
That's lame, man. See,
dude, but this is the one I bought when it came out.
Okay.
This is
so you read it a little bit
since the day it came out, and I just got it slabbed a year ago because I saw what people had prices on.
He said it's lame, Andy.
Shut up.
Well, we were just kind of talking about that before you popped on. Spawn #1. We all know that is, hey, Andy. You joined it.
His favorite dude, Aaron, not us.
Oh, that's fine.
Well,
Spawn.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Spawn #1. That is, I believe it's the second most produced comic book in comic book history. So literally everybody had it. Most of us have multiple copies of it because it was
high grade.
Exactly. So the average right now for a CGC 9.8 is $140. However, a 9.9, they had a record sale because the 9.9 sold for $5,100. So your 9.8 to a 9.9 went from $140 to $5,100. That is the only way to get Spawn #1 to be worth money. Like X-Men #1, the most produced comic book in history.
Right.
Yeah. I've got like 15 copies of Spawn in 9.9, I'm sure, if I just send them in to get graded. No, that's the thing. But see, I sold my entire collection post 1980 because just of that reason, that they're too plentiful, and they're too plentiful in high grade. And I don't know. I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I do chase condition, but when you start getting up at like to make a book collectible, that you have to get a 9.8, or it's really doesn't have any value.
Right.
That to me is too. I don't know. I look at anything post 1980 as being very overrated, just because there's so much of it available.
See,
but I know,
would almost say though, I would go post 1990, because I think there's some books, at least early 80s, that still rank.
Well, no, but okay, look, because comics quit being in spinner racks and were put on shelves, you get 10 times as many high grade copies of these books. Even like, say, look at Simonson's Thor, right? that's gaining a little bit of, it's gained some steam. I mean, it's overinflated right now because everything's overinflated because of the market, which I guess is a topic of discussion. But that, you know how easy it is to find that book in near mint condition? It's a piece of cake, and that's a 19. What was that? 83.
83.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just, and plus I grew up in the 70s. You know, I read comics in the 80s as well because I was in college and stuff, but I grew up in the 70s. And so I just kind of, you know, 1979 is it for me, with the exception of a few books. Like I do have the Simonson run on Thors because they're just so good, you know, and Miller's Dark Knight and Killing Joke and things like that here and there. But for the most part, you know, I'm after books that are more rare because I feel they have better longevity in the marketplace.
All right. Well,
stability too.
Let's dive into the three. So basically, for the audience, the way we're going to do this is we're talking about not getting comics because, I mean, if you're a comic fan and stuff, obviously that's fine. But this is more for somebody that's like, you know what, maybe I'll try investing in something different. And I hear all this talk about comic books and stuff. So the first category would be for somebody just trying to dip their toe and looking for books without basically breaking $150 budget per book. So somebody that's like, you know, I've got like $500-600 to spend, but I only want to spend it on, I want to take that and get, you know, 4 to 5, maybe even 6 books, you know. So what is the recommendation in regards to time period? I guess Aaron would say anything before 1980, you know.
Well, right now is a difficult time to buy because, as I just mentioned earlier, everything is inflated since COVID started, and people had, what I discovered was, I mean, this is theoretical. I haven't done a poll or anything, but just kind of logical assumptions and what I know about the market and stuff, is people that buy collectors books, high-end collectors books, are generally the people that were like engineers or, you know, had jobs that did not go away during COVID, right? So you got these people with still making the money they were making, but can't go on vacation anyplace, can't go to cons, can't do it. So you got this extra money. And I think that is part of the reason why you saw prices being driven up during that period of time.
Right. Well, he brings up a good point. He wonders how the back issue market will crash after the movies inevitably go the way of the Western. And my thought on that is, once again, before the movies, there are books out there that are always going to go up in value. And I see Aaron's point with pre-1980, but the books that he's like, a book that I always refer to is the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon. 2 years before Guardians of the Galaxy was announced, nobody knew what it was. That issue of the Incredible Hulk that first showed Rocket Raccoon was $1 book. It was in dollar boxes.
Yep.
Right.
And then series.
And then boom, the movie comes out. That issue of the Hulk now, if it's graded 9.0 or higher, is in a couple hundreds. You know.
Well, here's the deal though, and this is what you find out with all these movie tie-ins, is they spike because there's a lot of interest in it, but then they drop back down again.
And that's his point, I think. And I agree.
But it's a variable based on how well the movie does, and that's the
true.
problem with those. If it winds up being a good movie, then the interest can be sustained in it. But what we're seeing, let's just take Marvel Phase 4 right now. Marvel Phase 4 has really done this in the interest of comic books. There's not a lot of fantastic stuff being put out. So there's all this hype. Ms. Marvel, you know, the first appearance of Kamala Khan, as Ms. Marvel. Huge books, you know, they've been going up speculating. And, you know, a couple of years ago, you could get that book for $50, and then it was $100, then a couple hundred. Now they're around $400. The show comes out, and everybody's like, don't really care. It was not that, and now we're already starting to see a dive in it. People just don't care. X-23. First,
there was
Harley Quinn.
Right. Well,
if you want to do short-term investment, what you can do is you can speculate on first appearances of people that haven't appeared yet, you think are going to. Buy those books on the cheap, wait for them to explode, sell them at the peak, but don't hang on to them because they're going to drop. Inevitably, they're going to drop. But let me bring out a point real quick. You brought up Rocket Raccoon, okay? This book, right? It was dirt cheap, and then Guardian's success shot up through the roof. It's coming back down again because, again, Rocket Raccoon, whatever. You know what book is not coming down? First appearance of Groot, because that's a book from 1962, and it was a valuable book.
I was going to say that too. Yeah, the first appearance of Groot,
because that has
what was already worth something before,
right, but not anything like it is now. But you had the movie tie-in made it go up, but the fact that it is a super rare book because it's so old, and it's those Kirby monster books, finding those things in good in nice condition is really, really hard.
Yep.
And so Kirby monster books are collectible in and of themselves. Then you add in the movie tie-in, the popularity of the character, and now it goes up, explodes, and it's going to stay up because it's still a rare book. Where this Hulk issue and the Rocket Raccoon miniseries, those books are easily found in any grade. And so when the popularity of the character wanes, so does the interest in the book. But this, you find one of these even before this movie became a hit, and this was an expensive book, but now it's not coming back down.
No.
Because of those combinations that those newer books don't have.
I believe they did a second printing of this one. I think it's like a blue cover, if my memory serves. And even that one's a fairly pricey book in the hundreds, and that would be considered a second print by today's standards.
We talking like Monsters on the Prowl or something?
Of this when it came out?
No.
Oh.
No, later on.
Oh.
Are you talking about Monsters on the Prowl or something like that? They reprinted.
Yeah, it's one of those, but it wound up being considered. I believe they consider it a second print. I'd actually have to look that one up, but I know that you can find that one for a few $100 versus what this one's going for.
Well, but again, you're talking about a book that's in the 70s that's still 50 some years old, So even those reprint monster books, not necessarily one with Groot, but I mean, I've got like Monsters on the Prowl and Creatures on the Loose and things like that. Those still have value because they're old books and they're harder to find in nice condition. And it's popularity of the character, and then it's condition of the book, and then its availability. Those are the three factors, right?
Right.
And there's only a couple of books that kind of transcend that don't make any sense, like the first appearance of Moon Knight. That book is so plentiful in high grade, and yet it continues and has for years to command high prices because it's just one of those books that stuck. I think you're seeing the same thing that happened with the first appearance of Warlock in Thor 165. Those, of course, that's a more rare book, obviously, than Werewolf by Night. But I don't think that book is completely driven on the assumption that Warlock's going to be in the next Guardians movie. I think it's a key first appearance. It's a 1966 book, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it's very old. And I think regardless of how Warlock does in the MCU, that book is not going to drop.
Right.
Just like Moon Knight is not going to drop regardless.
Right.
And I can't really explain Moon Knight. The Warlock makes more sense to me just simply because of the age of the character.
Right.
Moon Knight has always defied logic. I mean, it is never at that time there was never been a movie, really no TV show. I think he made an appearance in one of the cartoons. There was nothing to drive it. He had no super long run in comic books. There was no reason for it other than being a Batman knockoff, basically, to drive it. And yet it continued to go. And every single convention, do you have Werewolf by Night 32? Nope. Yep. Do you have one? Everybody wanted it, and the price went up. Literally every 6 months, it took a jump.
Well, Silver Surfer is the same way. It's just a cool character that's really never had anything dry. In fact, it's never been that great of a series. Ron Mars had it for a while and did some nice stuff, in the 90s, and it got some longevity. But Silver Surfer is a secondary character, but he's cool looking. Right. And that first Silver Surfer series in 1968 is worth a ton. I mean, and I think Moon Knight's a little bit the same way. He's just kind of a cool looking character, and that's sort of driven him.
I think with Silver Surfer, though, it's also because when he first appeared in the Fantastic Four, it was really still early on with the birth of Marvel Comics.
I'm not talking about his FF appearance. I'm talking about his series in 1968.
Right.
Yeah.
But look at the Submariner. You can say that with the Submariner too, because that number one goes pretty good.
Well, and to give you an idea, Silver Surfer number one in mid grade, let's say you wanted a 5.0, it's right just shy of like $900. In an 8.0, it's about $3,200.
Yeah.
9.0, it's about $8,000. Now you're at a 9.6 and you're at about $23,000.
Well, I picked mine up. I got a 7.0. I picked it up 10 years ago or so at a New York show, and I paid $150 for a 7.0.
Nice.
And now it's, what, 12, 1,500 in 7.0?
About 19.
I had on my spin rack for the longest time, I had a coverless number one.
Oh,
and
so
then
brutal.
I was at a show like a year and a half ago, and I noticed on the back wall, it wasn't slabbed, but somebody had a coverless number one. And I was like, I just got to ask, what are you selling that for? And they're like, oh, let me look. Oh, it's like $150. I was like, okay. And I'm like, $150. I came home, I took my coverless number one, put it in a bag and board, and put it away. I was like, that can come off the spin rack. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, it's freaking coverless.
But some of those series or some of those characters, for whatever reason, they attach to the collective mentality, and they transcend all logic and why they're as popular or as expensive as they are. And again, the Silver Surfer, the first 7 issues were all king size square bound, and those are always tougher and high grade. And it's a 1968 book, so therefore it's 50 plus years old, 60 years old. So that helps. But there's books coming out that same period of time that just don't resonate the way that Silver Surfer does.
So then here's the question. Andy's question was, you got somebody, they want to stick $200,
right,
maybe $200 a month. Every month I'm going to put $200 into a book. What are you going to recommend that they maybe say 300? I'm going to put it into a book. What are you going to recommend for them to do every month? Go out and buy.
Well, I'll tell you, I have 2 ways to approach. I do have my cheap investments, like what you're talking about, like 150 or less. Sure. And then I have my, above that. And what I do for when I got to have a comic book fix, right? I just don't buy a comic. I always buy something I think is going to have some value long term. Right. But it's like, what can I get into for $100 or $150 that is a good book to get? What I've been doing is like this, for example, this is a issue of Iron Fist, right? Yep. Great Gil Kane cover. Early appearance of the Wrecking Crew, right? Which has got a little bit of steam because I guess they're reportedly going to appear in the She-Hulk series. I don't know. But, this is I spent $30 or $40 on this book, and I think it has potential to be, maybe 10 years from now, $150, $200 book, right? Not a huge investment, but you're making money, and that's the goal, right?
Well,
so the other things, and that's a 70s book.
It's quantity too, because going by, like you said, if you were to do that every month for a year, and then 10 years from now, just multiplies.
Okay, look at this. This is a 20 centers. This would be 1972 probably. It has our square cover here, or our letterbox, whatever you call that cover. Yeah. Those are 1972. So, and it's a Silver Surfer appearance in Fantasy Four. No, it's not a key one. But it's still, again, you're looking at a book that's 50 years old. This was a 3-part story. I got to get the other 2 parts, but this is the first part to it. And I look for things like, okay, cool cover, Silver Surfer appearance, 50 years old. And I got this for $90. Okay, near mint copy and $90. So, and I think this has growth potential, right? Another example, and again, I'm in the 70s because this is where I think the value is. You look for books that are under the radar right now. Like if everybody's focused on, say, Guardians of the Galaxy, well, I'm going to go buy
Right.
Thors, because no one's paying attention to Thor right now.
So you're in the Bronze Age.
Or Captain America or something. Yeah. So I'm always looking for these deals. I'm looking for these deals in bronze and silver books, not modern or Copper Age books. But look, this is just Defenders, another nice Gil Kane cover, fighting the Squadron Supreme.
Yep.
There's nothing super special about this book, but I get into it for $30. It's a near mint copy, and it has a nice, maybe Dr. Spectrum or these guys appear someplace, and suddenly this book is hot, But it's a nice looking book.
The thing with the Squadron I've noticed is everything from that time period where the Squadron pops in seems to be going up.
Because people are speculating on stuff. Now, if you want to get older, there's great value right now in Tales of Suspense.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I love these books. Now these are old. I mean, this is like this particular issue. I think this is 67. Yeah. February 67. I got a 9.4 of this. I think I paid I paid less than 200 for it.
Oh, nice.
And so I pick these up all the time when I can get them for $200 or less. And you can get them in 9.2 or better for $200 or less, or around $200.
I was going to say that's a 9.4. That's a nice looking copy.
Yeah. And they're you're not going to lose value on them. These may be slow gainers, but I guarantee you 10 years, 15 years from now, I've made at least $100 on this book, maybe more. And it's one that I really like. And it's one I can get into relatively cheap. So,
right, and they're not keys. So, I mean, the biggest thing that you won't be able to hop into any of those titles if they've got key first appearances or deaths and stuff like that. I mean, that's for your big collector because they're worth a lot of money. But these are all great stories. I'm actually collecting the Defenders right now, and I'm missing probably about 12, 14 issues yet. And they're just such a good read that whenever I can find them, just like you, I'm going to get that one. I need it. I want the story, and it's just worth it.
Yeah. And I think that if you're looking, the only way you can invest right now is try and get ahead of the curve on something. Right. And so you look, like I said, you look at characters that, like, another book I'm trying to get right now is Fantastic Four 126, which has the Buscema recreation of Fantastic Four #1 on it.
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Is that a hard one to get?
No, but
that's on my. That's funny. I have that on my list to get.
But that's $100 book, give or take. But you just have to. It takes a little bit longer if you're looking for a 9.2 or a 9.4, which I am, right? Because those are what you would call investment grade books. You're going to get your highest return on those. As when you buy lower grade books like that, you're not going to see return on your investment like you will on the higher grade ones. But they take longer to find because they're not as plentiful. But they're out there and they're affordable. And, that's a book that 10 or 15 years from now, people look back and go, oh, yeah, that was that really cool recreation of right there.
Yeah, no, that's literally, I'll just do that. That's on my list to get because of the cover. Well, that's just it, because of the cover. I just love that recreation.
And that's why people would buy this book, is because of that cover. And that makes it potentially something that is collectible and you could see a return on your investment on in the next several years. But you got to get them before they get hot. And then now, who knows, 5 years from now, this could be a $300 book. And you're like, geez, I don't want to pay $300 for it, but I would have paid $100 for it, if I got it now, which is why I'm trying to get it now.
And that's perfect for this category that we're talking about, is the lower end spender compared to, going to the mid range now, where somebody's looking to dump, $500-$600 to $1,000 for one book. It really opens up the window more, because then you can go into books that are just going to keep going up in value. I mean, there are some of those dumb ones, once again, that came out in the past 15, 20 years. It's like, that book's $600 for a 9.8. And it's like, yeah, but is it going to stay that way? And like I said, you brought up a great point. Post or pre-1980, you really can't go wrong.
It's a different market. People are buying these books because of all the three factors, right? Popularity, availability, and condition, right? Those are the three things that drive any book. Anything, again, post 1980 for me is availability. That's not a problem. Condition, not a problem. The only thing you're dealing with in those books is popularity, right? And which drives books. It does, but not consistently. So, and I think if you get older books, you get older books on the cheap. It's always a better investment because you have all three factors working in your favor eventually down the road.
Now, did you know, this is a little off topic, there's another Fantastic Four. I can't remember the number. It's on my list. I did not know it was a fill-in issue drawn by Ramona Fradon, inked by Joe Sinnott.
No kidding.
Yeah, hold on. I'll tell you the issue number.
Unaware of that.
Chat. I never knew that. And I saw an Epic collection that's coming out with the Fantastic Four in August or September. And this is one of the books that's in it, is the 126. And it goes, those things collect like 30 issues or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just doing a search on, about every issue. And I was like, oh my God, Ramona drew an issue of the freaking FF inked by Sinnott. I've got to get that. And it is number.
I didn't even know that. Another book that I think is flying under the radar is Fantastic Four 100. I think Kirby's last issue was 101 or 102, but it's an anniversary issue, has all these villains in it, has a great cover, and that's a book. And you can get that book, for $200 or less in a 9.2. If you can find one, because again, you're talking about a 1970 book, 71 book, 1970, yep. I think.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder.
Well, one of the ones that, I was going to mention, it's a little bit later than that. That's kind of in that range for that lower end collector. Swamp Thing 37. It came out in 1985. That's the first appearance of John Constantine as Hellblazer. Mm-hmm. And that's always solid. I mean, just a few years ago, that was a $70 book, and then it was a $90 book. Then it was about $125, and now your raw high grades are anywhere from $250 to $350. So it's been constantly gaining, and it's not super old, but it's not super new, and there's some in good shape, but not a ton of them. So it kind of fits right in there.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Randy, you have to watch the replay later. Just want to tell Aaron that Wraith of God is 2 thumbs up, and hail Kor-Drath. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you.
That's
excellent.
He said he was going to read it last night, and he did. So there you go. Thank you, Randy. Really appreciate that, buddy.
He did. He said that on the stream last night. He was going to read it. And the other one that I would say falls in that category is Conan the Barbarian, number 23.
What's 23?
That one's
First Red Sonja.
First Red Sonja.
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Yep. And everybody loves Red Sonja. I am honestly surprised that book has not taken off more. And Conan itself has been coming back. He's really been making a comeback. So maybe we're going to see that one finally jump up. But it's $200-300 now for a real good copy.
It's issue
it's
issue 133 of Fantastic Four by Ramona.
Yeah, someone called that in the chat. I missed who it was, but
okay.
133. That is really bizarre. I had no idea.
Yeah, so that's one I want to get just because of her being inked by Sinnott.
Yeah, well, just her work. I mean,
and her work too.
She ever worked on FF. That's so unique and bizarre that.
Yeah.
Wow, to check that out. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be had out there on the cheap, but you've got to know what you're looking for, and you've got to do some speculation too.
Yeah.
Roll the dice on stuff.
Thor 337, first Beta Ray Bill. That's another book that, man, it wasn't that long ago when you could buy that entire 337, 338, and 339 for like $80. Now it's about $250 for the first appearance of Beta Ray Bill. That's another one, and because everybody's clamoring for him to get into the movies. at some point Marvel's going to listen and at least drop them, and then I think it'll go nuts.
Yeah. Well, and you see this all the time, where eventually people, like I started buying 70s books, Andy, during our cross-gen years, because the Silver Age was super hot at that point and everything was going up. And I said, it's not going to be long before the average collector is priced out of Silver Age books. And what are they going to do? They're going to move to the Bronze Age because they're affordable. And that's exactly what happened. And now you see the Bronze Age prices are going through the roof. And so now it's kind of like, do people start moving into 80s books? I think they do to key issues like Thor again, but that's a book that's really plentiful. So it's like, how real is that value on that book? Or is it inflated because it's so easy to get? But popularity is driving that book, just like Moon Knight or something else. And it could sustain because of the popularity.
But like, for instance, talking about the 80s. So, I've often said my first comic was Captain America 275. It was 10 years ago, $1 box, no problem.
Yeah.
Probably even 6 years ago. But now, because of Zemo, that book, and it's not super expensive, but like a 9.0 or something is like $45-50.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that did come out in the 80s and it was plentiful, but how many were out there in really good condition? Because I still had the first copy I bought off the rack, but I never expected anything. So it was on my spin rack and all that crap and kind of beat up.
Well, that's true. When you're talking about books that at the time were not key books, people maybe, and it's the middle of a run of a book that was marginally popular, like Captain America. Yeah. You're going to see lower print runs. You're going to see less. But you got to do your homework, and then you got to speculate. Maybe Baron Zemo will blow up someday.
Right.
You find the first appearance or Jack Monroe, appearances in Captain America are ones that are starting to show some interest in that stuff, because whenever they get priced out of something, they're going to go try to find something else.
Right.
And that's when they start taking minor keys and making them major keys, because they're affordable, but then everybody gets in on them and then the price goes up and no longer they're not affordable anymore. Then they move to something else. So trying to stay ahead of the curve is obviously the key.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So let me ask you a question, because I noticed that you've got raw books, you've got slab books.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my opinion, but I'd like to hear your opinion on raw versus slab. Which do you prefer? Doesn't matter. And then we'll talk about signed books.
Okay. I used to hate slabbed books because I thought that was just a gimmick to raise prices, but because they become so ingrained in the collecting culture that you can't ignore them anymore. And what I realized a few years ago was, if I dropped, say, $500 or $600 on a book that wasn't graded, and then let's say I want to use that as trade bait to upgrade to something else, or maybe I wanted to sell it just flat out. I just bought it simply as an investment book. Now you take it to a retail and now you start arguing about condition.
Yep.
Well, that's not a 9.2, that's an 8.5. And you're like, and so what I realized was, I'll still buy raw books, but if I spend over $200, it's got to be slabbed, or I'm not going to do it, because there's so much potential for losing money on the investment when you don't agree on a grade. Correct. So mid-grade books, it doesn't matter, because everybody's like, yeah, that's a fine or whatever. But you get up into the 9.2s, 9.4s, 9.0s, that's argument city waiting to happen. And so I just bought a Thor 157 just because I love the cover. It was the Ragnarok cover, has this big claw holding Thor as he's bending back on the cover, Kirby book. And I bought a near mint copy he wanted $250 for it. I talked him down to $200, and it wasn't slabbed, but I went over it, and I feel real confident about the grade, but I'm willing to take that chance on a $200 or less book.
Right.
If I'm dropping more than $200, it's got to be graded, or I'm not going to do it, because it's just too risky.
Yep. And I agree with that. I was going to say, I've got a couple of friends of mine that each kind of ran into it. They bought some raw books and they got a good deal. And then I looked at them. One of them was color touched. And then I looked at one book and I like, that looks wrong. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that book's trimmed. He goes, no. I'm like, yeah, I guarantee it. So he walked around, took the book that he had bought, walked around, found the exact same book that was untrimmed, compared the two, and was like, oh, wow, it really was a trimmed book. You just paid full price for a trimmed book, where they would have caught that kind of stuff, both color touch,
Right.
if you've got rice paper for tears on the inside, whatever. They will catch that at either CGC, CBCS, or even PGX.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is we never used to worry about that when we were younger, like, someone screwing with the book or whatever. You never even thought about that stuff. But my son, for example, Josh, he bought, when he was a kid, got the first appearance of High Evolutionary. We were at a con in Florida, I think, and he went around and he got this, and the dog goes wild. He got this this raw copy of first appearance of High Evolutionary in Thor 120, 29. I can't remember exactly the number, but which is a super hot book now. He went to sell it, and it was in near mint, color touch.
Yep.
No way. Oh.
Just totally. He got it graded to sell it, and it came back with the color touch and an 8.5 instead of a 9.2, which is what, So even though he was still able to sell it for a profit, but he talk without me. I'll be right back.
No, go ahead. Dennis, let's Dr. Mass says, what does the chat think? I have a 9.2 first appearance of Harley Quinn. Keep it or sell. I paid $1.
Well, in that case, no matter what you do, you're on a personal preference. No matter what you do, you're making money.
Yeah.
Now, the first Harley Quinn shot up and went just stupid ridiculous. It went and exploded in outer space. Problem is, DC doesn't know what to do with Harley Quinn. They're now turning her from an absolutely fantastic villain, which is what made her so incredibly popular, all the way into like an anti-hero, wannabe hero right now. She's really losing steam. Her books aren't selling, and the price has been dropping down to more of a normal level. Yeah, as of right now, unless they do something with it, you missed your big window to sell it for at the high end, but at $1, you're going to make some good money on it no matter what. Yeah. If you love the character, hang on to it. If you don't, you might as well go ahead and get your money out of it. That's the way I would say it.
And for the topic of the show, when it comes to just investing, it's got to be slabbed all the way. If you're literally just going to buy books from an investment standpoint to sit on and hold on to, and you don't care about reading comics, just get CGC slab books or CBCS, whatever, all the time, because you're not concerned about reading it. Like Aaron said, you don't want to haggle with somebody 10, 15 years from now about the condition of it if you try to turn around and sell it. So,
did he say what his condition was? He bought it for $1, the Harley Quinn.
He said 9.2.
9.2. All right. So, yeah, that's what I needed to know. All right. Yeah, we're good on that.
So, I've got some slab books, and when I'm at a con, it just depends. I'm not like either of these guys. If I see a book I really want and like, and it's one I already have that's beat up, or it's one I don't care enough to read, then I'll buy it slabbed. Aaron, I was just saying that from an investor standpoint, if that's what you're getting into it for, you shouldn't even buy a raw book. It should always be slabbed, because you don't want to run into that trouble 10, 15 years from now.
Unless you know what you're looking for.
Right.
Well, the only issue with that, of course, is it makes it even harder then to find books that maybe you're looking for.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh,
because some of the ones that, if they're not key issues, I mean, some people do crazy stuff, and they'll take books that are completely not valuable and get them slabbed. And I'm like, you know what? This is a $40 book, and you just paid $50 to get it slabbed. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me. But
hey, man, he's got an Alpha Flight #1 slab, so you back off.
I got multiples. I got slabbed. I got unslabbed. I'll take that book in any condition.
Well, but again, it's, that's a personal thing. Like certain things that you just really love and you got to have for personal reasons that you throw out the whole collector mentality, right? Because that's a book you really want for
Right.
whatever reason. And everybody has those books. But like I'm not going to be able to get every issue of Captain America or Thor or Journey into Mystery slabbed.
Right.
But the ones that are, like I said, to me, it's always a price point. I'll take a slab book over an unslab book anytime.
Right.
But if, like, I picked up a Captain Marvel 32 Starlin issue, right?
Yeah.
Nothing particularly great about it, but it was a slab 9.2 and the guy was selling it. And I got it for basically what I'd pay for a raw book.
Right.
It was like $90 or something. And I'm like, of course, if I have the choice, I'm going to take the slabbed one because it's safer, but I will take unslabbed books if the dollar investment isn't too huge. Because a lot of times you buy books to fill in your run, right? Or maybe just if you like the cover and you don't have any aspirations that, 10 years from now, this is going to be $1,000 book.
Right.
It's probably going to stay right where it's at when you bought it. So those are not, to me, as important. I still get high grade because I think it makes it easier to sell at some point if you need to, even if it's not an important book. But no one's going to sit there and argue with me on a book that's worth $100, whether it's a 9.2 or a 9.0. You know what I mean? Because it's just not.
Yeah.
But they will on Silver Surfer #1, right? Or #4. So.
Noah says, fellows, I've got a Death of Superman. It's got a coffee cup ring on the back cover, but that's all. How much? I got $1.50 right here for you.
Well, and that's more. I was going to say, you got yourself the perfect coaster for your coffee
There
table.
you go. You got the perfect coaster right there. You should never have taken it out of the black poly bag.
That's right. At least if you had a hot cup of coffee, at least it would have melted the ring onto it. Then that would have been cool.
What a genius marketing ploy, though, right? So you sell all these books in bags, and they're good. If you open that bag, and now it's going to be worth less. So you've got to get at least one copy that you can keep in the bag, but you still want to read it. So now you got to get the other copy to cut open the bag so you can read it. So that's automatic, at least 2 sales on a single book. So
yep. It is brilliant. So there's 3 companies out there. So we'll talk slab just for a second. There's the original one was CGCS, and then Steve had left and started up a competitor, CBCS. And then there's PGX. If you're out buying your book, does it matter the company when you're looking at the book?
I don't trust PGX as much, especially the older stuff. They were really, I thought the grading was not good. And you can find 9.2 PGX from 10 years ago that you look at it and go, dude, this is not a 9.2. I found CBCS to be really, really good in terms of their grading. They're just not as popular. It's like beta and VHS, right? And it's kind of like CGC is more popular. And people, this is the odd thing to me. People will pay more money for a CGC graded book than they will a CBCS book, which makes no sense to me because CBCS is at least as good. I think they're more reputable in consistency with their grading than CGC is.
Yes.
But they're just not part of the mainstream, thought of, it's all CGC because that's what we've always known for so long. But
I think CBCS is slowly, I think over time it might even out. It might equal out. I don't think PGX ever will. I totally forgot they were even still around.
Yeah, me too.
I've got nothing by them.
They're better now. So PG, I've got some PGX, and I buy the book, not the grade that's on it when it comes to PGX. So I'll look at the grade and I'll see, it's a PGX 9.0. Okay, now I'll look at that book.
Right.
Do I actually think it's a 9.0 looking
Right.
at it? Could be a 9.4, could be an 8.5. They were so wild, but I'll buy the book that's in there, but I won't pay as much for a PGX because you never know what you're going to get inside. Whereas CBCS, they catch everything. So a lot of times my experience has been the CBCS books. If you sent it into both places, the grade might come back a little bit lower on CBCS because they tend to find everything Whereas CGC is like, we're going to let that go at a 9.6, where it might be a 9.4 at CBCS. You know, I believe the grading on CBCS a little bit better. However, there is a slight price differential between the two companies, but it's so slight now overall. Like if I do an appraisal for somebody for their insurance company, I don't really differentiate if it's a CGC or a CBCS for pricing it out. I will if it's a PGX though.
No, that's true. I sent in a copy of Shock Suspense Stories 13, which has the girl being pushed off the roller coaster. It has the only solo Frazetta story that he ever did for EC. In other words, he penciled and inked it. Because most of the time he inked like Williamson and other people, but he never penciled and inked his own story except for this one story in there. And so I got the book and I bought it as a 9.0, and it looks like a 9.0. It is a beautiful looking book, right? So I sent it into CBCS. I had a bunch of Golden Age books, well, several, not a bunch, but several that I thought I want to get these graded. So I sent them into CBCS, and that thing came back as a 7.5, and I about lost my mind, you know. And I was like, this is, I mean, I couldn't believe that it was graded as low as it was.
Right.
And I know, I mean, I don't know, but if I'd sent them to CGC, it probably would have been an 8.5 or something in that neighborhood, you know, 8.0, 8.5. And it looks like a 9, you know, just if you held it in your hand back in the old days before there was grading, sold it as a 9 and no one would have. What I've done now is I refuse to send any of my books that are unslabbed less than what I want them to. And I would rather, on the books I've, you know, like bought stuff I bought as a kid or 20 or 30 years ago, I would rather argue with a retailer if I had to sell it than have it confirmed that it's not as good as I think it is. But going forward, I buy a ton of slabbed books because I'll let someone else take the risk that their book's not going to come back as good as they think it is. And then I'll buy those as opposed to having it happen to me again.
Well, I did that with I'm looking at it, my Green Lantern Green Arrow 76. I bought it 20 years ago. It was restored, and I knew that when I bought it. The guy had a little label on it saying what was done, a little color touch up. I think a staple replaced in it, and he had it labeled as near mint, and it looked fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I paid like $275 for it 20 years ago, whatever it was. So I finally got it slabbed. I sent it into CGC, came back at a freaking 7.0.
Yeah.
Restored, and they caught everything.
Oh.
But I was still like, that pisses me off because I bought it as a near, and like you, I was like, this thing looks fantastic. And it came back 7. I was so annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah. It sucks when that happens. I had a couple of deals. These are ones I traded art for, but like I had one of the Green Lantern drug issues.
Yeah.
Adam, I think what was the one that had the big syringe on the cover? 80.
I don't know.
Yeah, one of those.
80s, but.
And it looked perfect, right? But then there ended up being like a stain or something on the back cover that I didn't catch, you know. And another one of the biggest ones that pissed me off was I bought a and this is the one I think that cured me of paying big money for unslabbed books. I got a Sergeant Fury 13, which has got the Captain America crossover in it.
Yeah.
It's like the second appearance of Cap after Avengers 4 or something, and or first crossover, something like that. And the guy was selling it as a 9.2 on eBay, and I looked close enough to me. I mean, I got it. And again, I bought this 20 years ago, so it was, you know, I paid $170 for it or something. And so then I just got it, and like a dummy, I never checked it when I got it. I looked at it, you know, in the bag, and, you know, never flipped it over or anything, and just put it in my collection. And so I've been thinking, oh yeah, I got a $1,200 book now or whatever. And then I pulled it out on a couple of years ago, flipped it over, huge crease down the back cover. So I went from a 9.2 to like a 7.0, just like that. And now it's worth, you know, maybe $200. I made $20 ahead on a book that I thought I was $900 ahead on.
Yeah.
So
Well, one of the big ones that we just ran into, I had a person I knew that they got their Hulk 181 and they were excited. It looked really nice. They sent it in to be slabbed, and they were really upset when it came back because it came back with the purple label. Why, you ask? Because in the book in the 1970s, they have something called Marvel value stamps that everybody loved to collect. Never looked at, never cracked open the book. It was cut out. And there it just went whoop, just like that. And you paid retail for a book because you didn't look. There were a bunch of the Marvel value stamps. So you always had to worry about the coupons if they cut out the Army Men or the value stamps. Just saying, you know that. And I
cut my value stamp out of Wraith of God. What are you saying?
That's why you got 2 of them.
That's right. And it was a flip. I'm like, which one's going to be worth more money? Which one do I want to really devalue? Damn it, I just don't know.
You know, I can still remember sitting there cutting up, but you really got to pay attention to that. And then another guy, he had gotten the Edge of Spider-Verse #2, so it was the first Gwen, right? The Gwen Stacy Spider-Man, and all excited. This is a mint-looking book. Sent it in, came back a 0.5.
A 0.5?
0.5, and you're like, what? How is that possible? Right on the top, it said, missing one of the pages. So when they printed it, it was an error because one of the entire things wasn't in there, and therefore it was an incomplete book because during the printing process, you know, I used to print them. So you put them up there, and then as it goes down the line, it grabs each of the pages. Well, it didn't grab one of the pages, so it was missing one of the wraps. 0.5.
Oh.
Okay. Well, this isn't better than that because that sucks. But I had a Golden Age book, I do have it, National Comics. I collect all the Uncle Sam Reed Crandall covers, love them. And beautiful book. Looks, I mean, you never know with Golden Age books because they're tricky, because they could not have anything seriously wrong with them and still not grade high just because of age factors and things. But this looked like a 9.0. It was a beauty, right? I sent it in to get graded. It came back a 5.0, and I lost my mind. I was like, what the heck?
What?
Centerfold was detached.
It was detached.
And I had no idea that, because when I bought the book, I don't think I ever, because it was so nice. It was like, I'm not going to flip this open and take a chance on tearing a page or something.
Yep.
So I, trusted the guy I got it from, which was a mistake. And maybe he hadn't even checked, but yeah, it had a detached centerfold. And I think the rule of thumb is you can't get higher than if you had a 10 and the book had a detached centerfold, it'd grade as a 7. Because that's as high as they'll grade a detached centerfold. So I've got this book that's a 5.0 with a detached centerfold, and I'm doing the math here thinking, well, that means if the highest it could have got was a 7.0, and this is a 5, that means this book would have, if it hadn't been detached, it would have been like an 8 or an 8.5. And that for a Golden Age book, that is amazing. And so I was just furious, because it is a really nice looking book. But
do you ever think, though, like, you don't want to think this, but at some point you got to think, was it detached when I sent it in, or did they F up going through it? And the guy's
that's true. I mean, you always hope for their integrity, right? But because I didn't know, because I didn't go through it.
Yeah.
But
there is subjectivity. So no matter what, even with the companies, there is. The one story that I've got, and they were guys that I used to know back when I lived up in the Midwest. This was in the earlier days of CGC and stuff. We were kind of testing it out. So one of the guys sent in X-Men 266, which is the first Gambit, and it came back a 9.6. So there were all of these rumors going out about inconsistencies. So he hands it to Guy B from the shop, cracks it open, sends it in, and it comes back a 9.4. All right, you can see that. Losing 0.2, something happened. It got mailed off, whatever. But they crack it open, sent it in raw. hands it to player C from the shop, who then sends it in on theirs. This is where it got weird. So it went from a 9.6 to a 9.4, which you could see happening. You got 6 people touching it plus the post office.
Mm-hmm.
Came back third time, a 9.8. How do you explain that?
It just goes to show, well, it goes to show you how subjective grading is, right? Especially when you're looking for little tiny details with a magnifying glass that maybe this guy caught and that guy missed, or this guy thinks that's more devaluing than that guy thinks it is. And, so it's still a crapshoot, but the fact that people have sort of accepted the CGC grades, especially as gospel, and it's like, you don't even have to look at it. If it's 9.2 CGC, it's a 9.2, right? And you can it's like a trading card. Here, there's a 9.2, give me that 9.2. No one sits there and goes, is it really a 9.2? Because there's no, people have given them that sort of authority now that it is what it is, right? Is that a good looking 9.2? Is it a bad looking 9.2? It doesn't matter. It's a 9.2,
right?
And so that's kind of how I look at that stuff. Like you said, except for PGX, I always have a very critical eye if I'm looking at those.
I'll buy them for the right price, and I'll look at the book. It's just like right now, is it a newsstand or is it a direct? I mean, that's the other one that everybody's been kind of going nuts over. Yeah. Particularly a lot of the guys at the that have the booths and shops. They're like, but it's a newsstand, and that's what people are hunting for right now. Our newsstand editions when they were available.
But see, when you're buying newer books, you have to look for reasons to make something collectible because there's so many of them, right? And there's so many of them high grade. So now you say, well, the newsstands are harder to find in high grade, relatively speaking, which they would be. So that becomes another factor then when you're buying new books as opposed to the older books.
That's true. I actually had somebody get First Man graded, and it came back at like a 9.4 or something. Mm-hmm. So he actually bought another one off me because he really wants a 9.8.
That's so hard because I look at as I'm unwrapping these Wraith of God books, and like I said, I had all from the printer. I had them all double boxed and shrink wrapped to make sure that I minimized any damage in the shipping, and they've all come out perfect except for one copy. And but you sit there and look at it and go, this looks like a 10.0. But I'm going to send some in because I'm just curious. I want to get each cover style graded, so I have one just for the heck of it. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what they come back as, because when you start getting them 9.6 and 9.8s, it's like, how do you even, do you get out your magnifying glass? And I don't have time to do that. I'll look at it and go, this looks like a really nice copy. I'll send it in and see what it comes back as, but who knows?
And you do. I used to help out a couple of shops, and they would get their own variant covers, and they would maybe get 3,500 or 4,000 or 5,000 copies. They would crack them open. I would sit there and go through them because I was trying to pull out if they wanted to send in 20 copies. These are the best candidates to be 9.8s, and that's kind of what I would do. I'd sit there and look, and it's just the littlest stuff. You got to look at the spine first. It is so time consuming. It is so difficult to do. The problem is when they ship them, on there, your top books tend to get not so good, and your bottom books tend to not get so good. So it's your middle ones that you just kind of hope for the best. And even there, out of say 5,000 copies, if you got maybe a dozen to 20 that were possible 9.8 candidates, that's it.
Yep. See, so did mine.
See, my mother, who has my almost 91-year-old mother, who is basically bagged and boarded every single book that you're getting in your campaign for Wraith of God. She wears rubber gloves so that no fingerprints or anything when she.
Does she really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, tell her she did a great job.
I will. Well, you guys are.
See, I like to leave my DNA on every book I send out. So.
Yeah, I don't want to hear any more about that.
What? Fingerprints? God,
yeah, exactly.
So last question. Yeah. Let's say some high roller comes up. He's like, I got 15, 20 grand to spend on one book. Should I look for, you could get a very nice copy of, say, a specific X-Men, 9 something, whatever, or get a lesser grade of something else that, you know what I mean? Does that question make sense?
Yes. I was, as a young buyer, I was always quantity over quality, which was just foolish. You want to invest as much as you can into a single book that has real good value, because your return's always going to be greater. Now, I don't have anything in that price range, but I'm just going to give this just as an example. I talked to Vincent Zerolo, I think is how you pronounce his last name, from Metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
We had this long conversation once, and he always had the same answer. I said, well, what do you think right now is a good investment? Golden Age. No matter when you ask him that question, he'll tell you Golden Age. And he's right, because of the rarity of the book. So if you came up to me and said, Aaron, you got $20,000 to drop on a book, I am not going to go buy like a 9.2 of Hulk 181. I'm going to go buy the most expensive Golden Age book, and a Golden Age book that is popular and sought after, right? You don't just want to buy something obscure that no one cares about.
Right.
And that's where I'm going to drop my 20 grand. Now, like this, for example.
Oops, wrong way. Wrong way. Let me see if I can. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
This is an iconic, great. There's only, in my opinion, there's only really 2 great covers in the Wiz Comics run. Number 1 and number 22, or pardon me, 25. Where
mine's graded lower.
Yeah, bummer for you. But I got into this. I think I paid $1,200 for this.
Yeah.
And I've got a Captain America Golden Age book that I paid in cash and trade $3,500 for, and it's about a $5,000 book now. But I'm always going to go with age and rarity. And like, if I could get an all select number 1,
mm-hmm.
that's a book I would get. It's probably Schomburg's best cover ever. Mm-hmm. And it's Captain America, Human Torch, Submariner, fighting Nazis. War books are always in demand. And the weird thing about Golden Age books is there's really no price guide. And although they're harder to find someone to buy, because they're not, not as many people that may want the first appearance of Wolverine. There's maybe a tenth of that number that are into Golden Age, but they are a hardcore group, and those books will sell. They will always sell, and they'll sell for big bucks, because those guys are the high rollers, the Golden Age buyers and dealers. And so yeah, I would, if I'm dumping money into a book, I'll select number 1 is kind of on my bucket list as the book to get. And but geez, I mean, can you imagine if you'd had, like you said, John Romita buying Action Comics number 1, or I mean, it's just, they're worth a fortune. And that's the thing, you can name your price because they're so freaking rare that you can say, well, the price guide says this, and they go, great, find me another copy of this book. I mean, I have a National Comics. Well, here, let me grab it real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a CGC store that actually worked out in my favor. Or CBS or CBC, whatever the heck they are. Okay, I'm going to strategically place my thumb over a racist image on this cover, so you won't.
Oh no!
Right there, so we can't see it. Okay, this is.
Yeah, I remember that.
This came back as a 7.5, which is really nice Golden Age grade. In fact, it is as far as I know, it's the second highest graded book of this. And there's a 9.4. The Edgar Church collection, the Mile High collection, there's a 9.4 of this graded, and this is the next highest graded book at 7.5. And so if I want, maybe I paid $275 for this about 20 years ago. So this book could be worth anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000, right? It just depends on how bad somebody wants a copy of this,
Right.
because there's just. Here's a great story. I was at San Diego, and a guy, one of the dealers there, had this book, but it was like in a 4.0, and this was right after I had bought this. So I had paid $275 for mine, and I knew it was high grade. I figured it was VF or somewhere in that neighborhood, and it's a VF minus. But when you get a book back from a graded company and it says VF minus, it looks like a VF plus, right? Or a 9.0, right? Just to the naked eye. So this is a really nice looking book. So the guy had a copy of this, and he was asking, and it was a VG copy. He was asking like $600 for it, right? And I just got this for $275 on eBay. And so I kind of was standing over the guy's shoulder watching him do the negotiation with this guy. And the guy's like, I don't know if I want to spend $600. And the dealer just simply said to him, he goes, when are you ever going to see this book again?
Bingo.
Right.
That's
And
it.
he was right. And the guy looked at him and said, yeah, you're right. And gave him the $600.
Yep.
Right. And so to me, if you got Golden Age books that people want, the sky's the limit on those books because they're so freaking rare.
No, and that's actually a really good point, because at Heroes Con, just a month and a half ago, whatever, I was walking around, and he gets some of the best dealers at that show. And I mean, I never really thought about it like that before, but you're right. On the back walls, people, out of all the dealers, they all had Golden Age stuff, but they all didn't have the same Golden Age stuff. There might be a few overlaps, but in comparison, almost every one of the big dealers at the show had 1 or 2 or 3 giant size X-Men #1s in various, conditions.
And the thing
Now,
is,
and they were all about the same. They weren't, 1 or 2 of them might have had a nice, really high grade, but most of them had around a, 5 to 7.5, So yeah, that makes really good sense. Yeah.
well, if you look at, and Henry Bemis says, I can't afford Golden Age Marvel at DC, but I do have a few standard comics, Black Terror, Fighting Yank. Black Terror is a good investment because that's a cool character. People dig that. The other point is, if you're buying like Marvel or Timely, Golden Age, War comics, you can never go wrong with that. Like Captain America, Human Torch, Submariner, or any of the, like All Winners, All Select, that have those in there. And another good investment buy is always, and I'm talking higher end, right? We're talking higher end.
Yeah.
Is EC horror books. Especially Haunt of Fear, Tales from the Crypt, and Vault of Horror. Those are books that are always in demand, like Kirby monster books. You can sell in any condition because people always want them. And so those are the, if I was going to buy a book, I don't like DC Golden Age because I think they're as boring as, well, we had this conversation last night the other night on the Professionals. We were making fun of, not the other night on the Professionals, we have in the past, where we're making fun of DC covers and, things like that, as opposed to Marvel covers. And they don't do anything for me. Right. But the Marvel stuff, even the war comics, were some cases where there was so much propaganda. They were so outrageous, sometimes racist. And they're things that are such an interesting slice of American history that I don't think you can ever go wrong investing in that stuff, because people are always going to want World War II stuff. They're always going to want a cover where a superhero is beating up Hitler, or something like that. So those are the things that I would, if I had the big money, I wouldn't be spending it on, like I said, modern books or even 70s books. I would go, there's some Silver Age books, obviously, like if you could get a good deal on a Avengers number, like I have an Avengers #4, right? And they paid almost $2,000 for.
I was going to say, there's the Silver Age books they have what I call evergreens. They're always going to be worth money. They're always going to continue to go up because
right.
X-Men #1, X-Men 94, Giant Size X-Men #1. You got your Avengers #1, Avengers 4, 5, your Fantastic Four 1, your Fantastic Four, 48 and 49, depending if you want the first full Galactus. Those are always going to be worth money. So if you got 20 grand and you're going to put it down on a copy, but I would say if you've got 20 grand or 30 grand, you buy the best possible copy that you can get with that money.
Yep.
So if you want an X-Men #1, you spend that 30 grand on the best X-Men #1 you can get your hands on for 30 grand, and then you keep that.
Because it will go
I
up.
agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same with with the DC Silver Age, Green Lanterns, Flash, the showcases,
Yep.
Justice League, that stuff too,
Yep.
Now, I already know what your answer is, but we've got a lot of people that love to collect signed books. What's your opinion on signed books, Aaron?
I hate signed books because why would I take a 9.2 or 9.4 book and have somebody write on it?
Well, I can't get my Wraith of God slabbed.
Well, that's the other thing. You can't now. I've got a Werewolf by Night #1 signed by Plug on the cover, and it's like it's a 9.2, 9.4 type copy, but I could never get it slabbed because of that signature on there. I mean, I know it's Plug's signature. I didn't buy it. I didn't have it signed by Plug.
Right.
I found the copy, and in fact, I didn't realize it was signed when I bought it, or I probably wouldn't have bought it. But I can tell by looking at it that it's Plug's signature.
Right.
I know it's not a fake signature, but so yeah, I mean, when I get books like artists' books and stuff,
Yeah.
I always have them sign it on the inside, always. But if I get because to me it's a different thing, because books, art books, and things like that, condition is important, but not as important as it is with comics. And so you can get a signed book that's signed by Wrightson, and that makes it worth way more money. Yep. You sign a comic book, like people had like Stan Lee sign like their FF #1. I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? But there are people that do collect signatures, but I think
because just using your example of FF #1 signed by Stan, if you get if when you had that signed, you had it witnessed and everything for CGC,
right?
And they slabbed it. That's worth, and it say it came back at a 7.0. That one signed by Stan is worth more than a 7.0 not signed by Stan.
But I think you cut your audience probably by 2/3 of people that actually want that book. I think there's guys that collect signed books, and that's a whole subcategory. But somebody like me, I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't. I don't care if Ditko signed Amazing 15 #1. I would, or Amazing 15 and 9.2. Right. I want a 9.2 cover that doesn't have writing on it. I don't care who wrote on it. And but I think but you're right. There are people that go for signature books.
My experience is the exact opposite. The people that absolutely do not want a signature on the book are a lot smaller than the people. There are some that only collect signatures. There are some that don't collect any signatures and don't want signatures. And then there's a whole group, which is the entire middle segment of it, which is the largest, where they don't go out of their way. But if they get the right book and it's signed by the right guy, they're all in on something like that. I would sell more signed books because of that particular mentality.
Right.
Now, I just read a really great article talking specifically about Stan Lee, because he passed in November of 2018. But back then, Stan would sign anything. You brought up even a DC comic book, he would turn around and sign it. He didn't care if you brought it to him, he would sign it. So Stan Lee is probably the largest number of signatures that exist in the marketplace. It's got to be Stan Lee, right? But yet, if it's a key book, particularly if something that Stan was integral for or something like that, that book value explodes. Versus if it's Stan Lee that's on Gambit, the first Gambit, he didn't do anything with it, so it doesn't really matter. It's like $100 book then because it doesn't do anything. But on something that actually is meaningful, that signature is worth an awful lot of money.
Well, it might be my own personal prejudice too, but I think that you say that you're right. Most people, your average collector, would prefer to have a signed book, right? But they're not necessarily investment collectors. And so I wonder if there's a difference between a high end, like if you've got a bunch of high rollers in a room, right, that want an amazing 15, would they rather have one signed by Stan Lee, or would they rather have one not signed by Stan Lee? You know, I don't know. I guess, I mean, that to me, that's just a thing that drives me nuts. And I mean, I've had books signed, but I haven't signed it on the inside. And those are usually copies that I don't use as a collector copy, but just as like a personal thing. Right. Like I had Steve Englehart sign. My favorite issue of Cap was 164, which is the first appearance of Nightshade, where she and Alan Lee Weiss drew it. And it's just a really great book. And I was at a con with Englehart, and I had him sign it, but I had him sign it on the inside. Right. And he actually wrote this, like, I go, dude, what are you doing writing a book? He wrote this little message in there, you know, underneath the indicia, but it wasn't a super high grade book. I mean, it was decent, you know, but I went out and bought a high grade copy of it that was unsigned. So now I have the signed copy by Englehart, and then I have the unsigned. And I just think it's easier. If you're using it as like currency, it's easier to trade that or sell it without the signature, because then you don't have to worry about. I think everybody's always going to be interested in a collector book, like an older book, as an unsigned copy, where I think the signed copy may limit your audience. And I may be wrong, but that's...
Yep, I hear you. Well, and you and I have talked before on it, but when I bought my X-Men #1, I bought a Slab 9.0. And then I literally the very next week went to MegaCon and got a private signing with Stan Lee, and they cracked my 9.0 that I had just bought so that I could get Stan to sign it. And it came back an 8.5 at the show. They brought it right back to the show for me. So it came back an 8.5. I had some of my friends that absolutely lost their mind, screaming at me, "Why would you do that? You just lost all this money on the book." I've got my other friends sitting there going, "Dude, your book's so much more valuable. I'd rather have that one." And I'm sitting there in the middle. Well, it doesn't matter because I'm never selling this book. But because for me, that was my pinnacle. Stan Lee on X-Men #1 was always my goal. And I made it happen. But I had some guys that were so upset with me. They'll still be upset with me, and we'll be on a different conversation. They're like, "Oh yeah, you mean like when you signed your X-Men #1? Damn, you're still going there."
Well, it's funny, but no, I mean that's the thing, right? But I think that you probably what you lost in the 0.5, you gained in the signature for the people that collect the signature books, right? In terms of value. So. But I just wouldn't be one of those guys. You would, if I was interested in buying that from you, and you got it signed by Stan, and it went from a 9 to 8.5, I would no longer be interested as a buying customer. But you're still going to have that group of people that are into signature books, because everybody sort of attaches themselves to certain things, just like they do titles. Like I'm an Amazing Spider-Man guy, or I'm a Green Lantern guy, or whatever. Well, now there's also people that are signature guys. All they do is collect signature books, right? Yeah. You just got to find those guys.
Yep. Yep. Well, on that note, we're going to have to cut it because I have to pick my kid up from work. It's one of those days. Darn her, and not wanting to drive. God,
same problem.
I know I got to work on that. Aaron, if you want to pitch anything out there, go right ahead.
Yeah, just remind everybody that we are in fulfillment on Wraith of God. We've shipped out today we'll have shipped out 1,000 packages. And some of those are multi-book packages. So I think we're probably have shipped maybe 1,600 books at this point. And I also have the early sign up for Wraith of God Blood Hunters, which is the sequel. So those of you who got the book and are still waiting, I'm delivering, obviously. So I'd encourage everybody to go visit Indiegogo and sign up for Wraith of God Blood Hunters, which will go live as soon as we're done with fulfillment on Wraith of God. So
there you go. And then I have Kor-Drath, The Reckoning by Dennis and myself. Actually, Dennis is writing it, and we're working on it together. And here is a new teaser trailer I put together.
certified badass.
Unlike Rotten Tomatoes, which certifies things fresh, we certify things badass.
And it is totally badass.
So if you sign up now and you back the campaign, you will get, oh, that's not it. Well, you'll get this trading card of Lilith by signing up and backing the campaign when it goes live. And I spoiled it out of order. Here is the cover to the first one, colored by Dan Lawless. So there's that all worked up. Beautiful job he did. Really, really, Dennis and I were really, really happy with it. So that's that, guys. Link in the description below. So go check that out.
And for those of you who are new and are on Andy's channel or came over from all the other ones, I'll put it in the description below, but I put it in the chat. Make sure you sign up not only for Andy's, our channel, but then the DNA channel, where we do everything together. We're talking about the campaign. We do reviews, all that kind of fun stuff. So make sure you subscribe to both channels so you get all the info.
And Aaron's too, like this guy said.
For more awesome content, like and subscribe now.
See? Listen to that commanding voice.
It is.
You have to.
Do whatever he says.
That's right.
It's like
All right,
Darth
guys. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. Probably, I don't even know what my daughter's schedule is next week. We'll be back Wednesday.
At some time.
Aaron will be on Sunday night, I'm assuming, like he always does.
Yep.
And we'll catch you guys later. No close this time. We're just doing this. Bye, everybody.
Live long.